Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the New Media Tech Show. This show is focused on the new media technologies, and I want to describe, first of all, what new media is. New media is the new way we're starting to watch our content. Traditional media, which is more broadcast, has been TV or radio, and you kind of watch it up until recently when it was broadcast. With DVRs, we can kind of change that now and watch things when we want to. But new media comes over the internet for the most part, and it can be watched anytime. It can be downloaded at any time. And a couple of companies have really started this in the last couple of years. The biggest one who started it was Netflix, where you could stream a movie at any time you wanted. That's gone farther. The show you're watching right now, you could be watching it on your phone, or you could be listening to it in your car or on your phone. You could be watching it on an iPad. You could even be watching it on the screen, big screen on in your living room. And that's the thing about new media is new media can be played anywhere and on many different devices and at any time. And it's basically an on-demand world. We're starting to see this more with cable TV companies where you can get on demand. That's typically streamed data. So the name podcast, as some people have called it, is a form of new media. I prefer to call them netcasts because they're delivered so many different ways. In fact, if you're on and watching our streaming right now, you're actually watching this live as if you were watching it on a broadcast station. Or you could be listening, like I said, listening to this from a download or on YouTube and any other places that we distribute media. So what we're going to do with this podcast is we're going to talk about what we do as a new media company. And we had some struggles getting things set up and getting into the podcasting or netcasting type of business. And a lot of people want to just have something they want to get the word out with. And we were trying to put a show together that will teach you how you can do what we're doing and get past some of the struggles that we had. We created a studio that on I wouldn't say a shoestring budget, but a small budget. And that's pretty typical for people who have something they want to get out. And we're going to talk about some of the technologies that can be used to either do video or audio and do it on a low cost. Plus, we can take it to the next level also and discuss some of the higher cost options as well. We're going to discuss some of the new equipment that comes out as it comes out, things like that. So this is our first introductory podcast, so there's not going to be a lot of information in this one. In our next one, we're going to start with a studio tour, and our studio isn't, big or glamorous or anything like that, but it's very functional, and we want to give you some background on what our studio can do and how we're doing it and some options for you as well. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll keep doing different studio tours. We're constantly bringing in and out new equipment. We'll talk about that as well. We'll talk about workflow. After you've created your content, what do you do? Where do you put it? Along with that will be some distribution locations like we're using, some marketing of your show. How do you get the word out about your show? Things like that. So we're going to go through all that. And this is a constant learning process for us as well. So you're going to be learning along with us on a lot of things. So we're still figuring out stuff. We'll talk about some of the switchers. We use Blackmagic ATEM switcher, and we actually have some tools that we've created. We actually have an iPad control, so I can sit in here and as I'm setting things up, use the iPad control to perform different functions with the ATEM start and stop recordings, things like that. And we'll talk about that, and we'll share how we did that and things you can do as well. We'll also talk about some of the audio gear. This studio started out as an audio studio. We built this room to do audio recording, and then we're thinking like, well, it's a good sound room. Why don't we just go ahead and redo it a little bit to perform video? So this room is a multifunction, the one I'm in. It does both audio and video recording. So we'll talk about that as well. Our background is very strong in audio, so we're going to go through some of the equipment that we use. I actually have something that I can recommend. It's a little on the pricey side, but its functionality is is very good, and supposedly they're coming out with a smaller version of it, which may fit other studios as well. So, like I said, this is a very first one. We're going to have some Q&A sessions as well. We can go, if you're watching live, you could be in the chat room right now. I'll put the links and everything in the show notes for the chat room and for this page. We like people to watch live as we record, mainly because we interact with the chat room as it happens, and we can answer questions as you have them. We are going to try to do this on a regular weekly schedule currently. And if we get enough content, we may even go more often than the weekly. I currently say we're planning on weekly. You can get to, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and you'll start getting updates as we put new ones up there. If you're watching this on a podcast, subscribe to the podcast and get the regular downloads as well. Each week we're going to have a different subject, and we actually want input from you. If you have some particular subject you'd like us to talk about, you can send us email to newmedia@tech-zen.tv. And we may not always respond to all the emails because we get lots of emails with the other shows that we're doing, but your email will definitely get read. So we want you to know that for sure too. We will also be bringing in special guests from time to time. I have a lot of friends that are in this industry and can let us talk about some hardware that we don't have in the studio, or bring it in, let us see it, demonstrate it, things like that. And so we'll have some other people. If you've seen some of other shows, you know that we do guests via Skype as well. Not everybody lives in the area where we live, so it's very frequent that most of our guests don't live here, as a matter of fact. So our primary way of connecting with them is via Skype, and we'll talk about that too, because that is if you're going to do an interview style netcast, you need to find some way to connect with the people you're going to interview, and we'll talk about that. There's some tricks we can do. Skype is free. We have always been looking for a better option than Skype. We can say for sure that the other chat programs are not better than Skype. Skype is much better than all of them when it comes to the quality of the video and the audio, and it's very consistent for the most part. We have heard of other technologies that are rather expensive to do the same thing that we do with Skype, and we just have never had the opportunity to use them. And again, it's kind of beyond our budget, for what we're doing as a small netcasting shop here. Our shows are growing, and that's a good sign that we're actually marketing them well, and we want to share some of how we do that with you, so your show can get found, get some viewers, maybe and ultimately start bringing in some revenue through sponsorships and things like that. So you'll see I'm sitting in the room here kind of by myself today, but we do hope to change that, and in the very near future. I have other people, like I said, in the other room that are helping me out today, and we'll bring them in, and they'll describe some of what they do for us as far as the technical side. Everybody here does something technical for the most part, and like I said, we'll start going over some of the studio layouts. That's our next show of what we've done here, just to get that's the most common question we get on our other shows is, how are you doing this? And that's something that we want to cover, fairly quickly in the beginning, because that's the most questions that we're getting. And this is kind of why the show came from, was as we're doing these other shows, people are saying, what are you using to do this? Or how are you doing this? And rather than answering them one at a time, which is what we've been doing, we wanted to put together a show, because obviously there's people who want to know how we're doing this. And all we ever want to do is teach people and let them figure things out from how to do things. We don't want to hide anything. It's all open here. That's what we do, is we teach and we train, and that's what we like to do. So that's where this show came from. It's a little loose right now because it's something we started doing really quickly based on the number of questions that we're getting from other shows. So this is definitely a show in transformation, or in creation, I should probably say. So we really appreciate any input that you have, that you want to see from a studio technical perspective, and the workflow perspective, and the marketing of the show, and finding sponsors for shows, things like that. We can help you with most of that stuff. We do, as a company outside of TechZen TV, also have a company that's a regular studio. It's a studio provider, and that's what we were doing before. Many on-site video shoots. We're starting to do more things like this now, where we can help. We actually go out and help companies, netcast a live meeting of some kind, or bring together a bunch of large audiences in different locations around the United States or something like that. So company has 2 offices and they want to have one big meeting with both companies or both sides of it. We can go in and set up the netcast. So we do a lot of consulting now also for video work and studio setups, which is kind of what we did with ours. Most of our people that we set up are like us. They don't want to spend a ton of money to create a studio. We have some people that do, intend on putting, $100,000 or more in building a video studio, but that's not the typical company. They don't want to spend that kind of money to do a video, but they might want to do training videos, and they do netcast. We've actually even had some religious organizations that want to do a weekly video podcast, and they just designate a room to this, and we go and help them set it up. So this is the kind of thing we're going to talk about over those next 100 or so episodes, however many it takes to get it all out there. And we plan on doing this for as long as we have good content to provide, and people will have questions and want answers. So again, welcome to the very first episode. Not a very structured episode, but I just wanted to introduce the show in this very first one. So if this is something that's of interest to you, like I said, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or you can subscribe to the podcast, like in iTunes or whatever you're watching your podcast on, or if you're on an iPad, you can use the podcast app. We deliver it in audio and video formats of different sizes for different pieces of hardware. Even working on a new Roku app, so you'll be able to watch it on Roku and other desktop boxes as well. So that's all in progress, and we'll talk about that too in here, because that's something that's development's not new to us, but the Roku box itself is new to us. So we're looking at it as another potential platform to deliver our content on, and there's many of these out there. We have an iPad app that's in testing right now as well, that's dedicated just to all of our shows, and we're working with a couple other people as well. So that's something we'll discuss in future shows as well. How did we do that, or who do we have to talk to say, for example, get your show onto any of the desktop boxes, like TiVo, for example. We're figuring out some of them, but we've figured out some of them as well, and got some good distribution on our other shows, and they're gaining ground very quickly. Very happily, they're growing the ground very quickly. So we really like that. So again, subscribe or to either a YouTuber or any of the podcast apps, and you'll get the shows as they come up. And we have many plans going forward in the future. I have a list in front of me. This list is a couple of the things that we already have planned for the next probably 24 shows. We're already planned out. We are currently recording this once a week. We will continue with that unless we see a need to increase that. But it'll always be at least once a week. And the regular scheduled time, you can always watch us live, or when we're broadcasting or when we're recording, we're broadcasting on Ustream always. And we start before and end after. And if you were like on today, you saw, if you're in the chat room, we're interacting with the chat room, answering some questions, things like that. I'm not sorry about this show, because this show was kind of new. That was actually some of the questions that we had on the chat room. So yeah, interact with the chat room. We watch the chat room. I have it up here right above me, and we can see what's going on in there. And we like to interact with the chat room. So, please watch live if you can. All right. Well, we'll see y'all next week. Thank you very much.